videos quickly, so I was looking for a video editor. I get on a site called onlinejobs.ph. Has anybody heard of it? If you haven't and you may hire someone in the Philippines, that's like the site to know. It's very good. Well, you can hire people directly. You could go to Upwork and hire people through there, but a lot of times you might pay a bit more of a premium. You can find people for full-time work. The definition of full-time in the Philippines is sometimes a little skewed because some people have 2 full-time jobs, which is crazy to think, because I don't know anyone personally that has 2 full-time jobs. And my grandpa did, I guess, but not recently. But in the Philippines, it's more of a common thing. But $300 to $1,000 per month, you can hire a full-time person. So I was editing videos. I had little 6-minute videos to edit, and I hire a person, and they edit a video. They were terrible, and I spent 30 minutes talking to each one, interviewing them. Hey, how's it going? You put a job posting out, and 50 people want the job. You find 10, and you set up 6 Zoom calls, and you talk to each of them for 20 minutes because you want to be polite. But even if after 90 seconds you're like, wow, this person is not going to be for me, but you can't end it after 90 seconds unless, because, well, anyways, I didn't. And then they do it. Then you pay them to do a video, and it's terrible. And I went through 10 videos like that. And then I did another posting that said, if you'd like to apply for the job, well, in the middle of the job posting, I said something like, I sure love the Power Rangers. Which one is your favorite? In the middle of the job posting. And people that read the interview, that read it would be like, my favorite Power Ranger is X. That wasn't my question, but you put a question like that. And then I went from 50 applicants to finding 7 that read the post. Maybe that says that they're more serious about it, because people that are just applying. And then the next the next thing I did was I said, here's a sample video that I want you to give me a 30-minute edit for, because a 30-second edit, I would like to see your style. So on that next round, I got 10 videos edited back. One of them was from Pia, who, this was 4 years ago. I hired Pia, and she edited videos for me. And she was great. So I hired her full time. And of all of the kind of 20 people that I sorted through at first, maybe 15, finding her, that was my most efficient way of doing it. Was saying, here's a sample task. Please do this sample task for me. And I didn't feel guilty about people wasting their time. At first I did, but because 7 other people edited little videos and I didn't hire them. But that was maybe a hiring tip that I used to find somebody great. She was working for me for what, $600 a month or something. And we bought the brand Grand Trunk, where, we sell hammocks and chairs, and we took the brand over, moved him over to Utah, and I was the first customer service guy. So immediately, as I was getting into that, I started to hire Pia, or to help Pia learn to do our customer service. And since then, she has been responsible. She's been like the second in line for all of our customer service at Grand Trunk. So instead of having to find someone, especially during COVID and whatever, instead of having to find someone to do customer service and pay them $30,000 a year, I've had a person that is pretty loyal to us and loves the brand and is an amazing employee. And it's less than $8,000 a year. 2 years ago, I found another executive assistant. I hired 2. One, after maybe 4 months, didn't work so well. And I kept this other one. His name is Sydney. And anyways, he still works for me, and I'll tell you what he does. I think I've got 3 minutes left. Siri, start a stopwatch. Okay. So my goal long term I have the co-working space that has plenty of undone things. Like, I need more bandwidth in my life. I'm very spread out and do a lot of things. I have Grand Trunk. I run coaching groups. I'm like always overextended, kind of by design. It's an adventure that I like, So for me, I kind of want to have my own executive team long term that I pay 3 or 4 grand a month to in the Philippines. So I'm long term, that's kind of my strategy is I want my own team that comes with me on any project I do. So I have Pia, she's working in one of the businesses, and then I have Sydney. How do I utilize Sydney in my businesses? He's done a lot of my LinkedIn lead generation. I built a volley group where I met several people in here actually, and Sydney did all of my reach out on LinkedIn, find people, you know, send the initial request. And I know there's software you can do to automate that, but he built my group to about 600 members. He would, if I post a link on LinkedIn, hey, I did this bike tour. Does anybody want a guide for my wife and I put together this guide? It's just free. Let me know. Send me a message. I'm not sending that message. They'll message, and Sydney keeps a track on my LinkedIn inbox, and he'll just send the link and whatever. I actually stopped checking email for a while, and I only looked at it once a week, and I cleaned it out once a week. But Sydney, what he does is he keeps an eye on it throughout the day, and in a Google Doc, he will update, you got a message from Nancy, and she asked this question. And then, so every day at 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., he gives me an overview of emails that I got that need a response. And then I would respond to them in line in a Google Doc. So I couldn't get sucked into email world. And he would also check my LinkedIn and tell me who commented, what their comment was, the posts that I made, how many impressions there were. And then I would reply to comments in the Google Doc. So I would go throughout the day not getting on to LinkedIn or my email. I didn't have a very important job the last few months. Now I'm doing like a sales manager role in Grand Trunk. It's harder for me to do that exactly, but that's the kind of thing where he's helping me really stay on top of things, where I'm not needing to be as on top of things. Like I really am trying to be present where I don't have to be keeping an eye on the emails, and anything that important that comes through, he sends me, and he's on iMessage as well. So he'll just send me an iMessage. So I do check my text messages, but email, LinkedIn messages, everything else, he is kind of my brain there. And I think it's a pretty great investment for $650 a month, especially if long-term he can learn how I work, you know, figure out my style and so on. So long-term, my goal is to have several people like him and even create some redundancy between all of them so they can be cross-trained. So when one gets sick or whatever, that's how I've used VAs. So any questions? Yes. Super email, okay. I should look at it.
Extreme with a Google Doc, spend 5-10 minutes. That's brilliant.
Nothing compares. It's a Sinead O'Connor song. It's really good. Yeah. So onlinejobs.ph, you pay $50. It's John Jonas in Utah County that started it. John Jonas, really, and he has the most amazing email newsletter. You sign up for his newsletter, he'll tell you everything about hiring workers in the Philippines. It's really like, I hate email. I unsubscribe to everything. He's the one that I didn't. One of 3. It's very good. You pay $50 while you're recruiting, and then once you've recruited, you turn it off, and you hire them directly. So there's no middleman. Like I'm helping a friend start a staffing agency where there'll be a definite middleman commission, or one of them recruits where you pay her like $100, which I've had several friends do. But I guess the last thing I would say is it's kind of a pain. It's an investment to do right, and it's a long-term thing. You're not just going to hire somebody and make your life easy tomorrow or even 2 months from now. I think I'm actually worse than normal at delegating, so maybe you will. But it's kind of a long road, but I would say definitely worth the investment.
Okay, thank you. Give him a hand. Give a round of applause, everybody. Okay, so quick question by show of hands. How many of you are entrepreneurs and own a business? Raise your hands, please. How many of you have your dream team assembled already? Raise your hands. That's what I thought. Okay, so by show of hands, how many people have at least one C-suite executive on your team? At least one. Come on, it's you, right? Everybody should raise their hand. How many have at least two C-suite executives on your team? Good, less. How many have three C-suite executives on your team? Still, bueno. How about four? It's about where it cuts off typically. I have built a career as an entrepreneur as being the dumbest person in the boardroom. That's my goal. My goal is to surround myself with people so much smarter than me, it's not very hard to do. So how do you do that? I'm gonna go back to the basketball analogy. All right, you remember the basketball analogy? Remember how many watch a sport? How many know what sports is? What would happen if you had a professional basketball team that had three players taking on a full team? How would they do? Anybody? Why not? Exactly. Too many functions to do. In a team, every person has their function, right? If one is weak, what happens? The opponent figures out the weakness and they play upon it. So business is not any different, all right? You have different functionalities in a business, even a high growth business. You have to have a full C-suite. You remember the analogy of what could happen if you had to pay their salary completely or just for the time they play the game? What's the differential on that? Anybody? Versus paying them $5 million a year or $50 million a year versus just the time they played the game. It's a fraction of it. That's all you need them for, right? Just the time they played the game. So how do you build your dream team? How many have the budget for a full C-suite? I'm talking about 5 or 6 people making $250,000 a year. How many have that budget? Sucks, doesn't it? Yeah, it sucks, doesn't it? So what do? 2 choices. A, you don't hire them. You do everything by yourself. How many have tried that? How's it worked out for you? How many people have gone the other way around where you get your initial tranche of equity? Let's say you have a $5 million round, and the first thing you do is hire a full C-suite. How's that work out? Anybody? The idea is to, number one, we'll talk about financing your company later on, how to manage cash flow even after you get your tranche of equity. But how do you manage that? Well, we talked about it fractionally, all right? The idea is if you can build your dream team, but only on what you need to consume, that's kind of the secret sauce for an early stage company, right? It sounds pretty simple. How do you figure that out? Well, you figure out what your skill set you need, how many hours you need them, and basically fill that in. So we all know the fractional CFO model, right? We all know the now CFO, Amply, all those are great guys. It doesn't just apply to CFO. It applies to every part of your business, all right? You need to have a, bless you, you need to have a complete C-suite built around your business, period, right? The most important thing that I like to start off with is a CFO. How many people in this room are preparing forecasted financial statements? Raise your hands. All right? That's keeping score. That's a roadmap to your business, guys. I wouldn't play a baseball game without keeping score. How much more important is your company? You should not grow your business. Is there like something in the room here? Bless you. You should not grow your business without knowing where it's going first and how you're going to cash flow it, all right? I've seen companies die from indigestion over starvation, meaning they've grown themselves into bankruptcy because they grew without a roadmap. They grew without knowing their forecasted financials, how they're going to consume cash, how they're going to, gross profit margin, whole 9 yards. That's done by a CFO. Anybody here have a full-time CFO on staff? Probably not, because they're pretty damn expensive. But you can employ a fractional one to do that very thing. If you're doing an equity raise, you should not prepare a deck unless you have forecasted financials to back up the numbers on your deck, period. People say, I'm going to do a raise. Great. Go get a fractional CFO. Get your financials in line. Get your forecasts in line. That will flow into your deck, which will flow into your presentation, which will be your investor meetings. It's a very, very simple idea, but I want to drill it down. Fractional works. As you grow, what's going to happen is you'll start to pick off some of those and bring them in full time. As you scale, it makes sense to bring in the full-time C-suite. But again, you should have at least 4 to 5 C-suites involved in your company with every discipline there is. CEO, CRO, CTO, if you have tech, CMO, COO, CFO, at the very least. Otherwise, things will fall through the crack. Any questions at all? Please. Thank you for asking that question. These C-suites come in different forms, all right? Now, full disclosure, I own a company that does this. Where do I find my people? We find people that have had an exit or retired, and they realize after 6 months, holy crap, I'm bored. Bored to tears. I'm staring at my spouse all day. I'm watching too much TV or videos or whatever. So we say, hey, come back to work. You want to work 5 hours a week? Awesome. 10 hours a week? Awesome. They're at the top of their game, the top of the skill set. They were making $250 a year. They don't have to work. They don't want to work 40 hours a week, but they want to do something, want to get back, they want to stay sharp. That's where we find a lot of them. Now, some are professionals. They don't want to work for one company. They want to see different companies, move around, look around. They're all over the place. And they'll do it for sweat equity. They'll do it for a fee. It just doesn't matter to them because they don't need to work. They don't need a job. They do it for the love of the game. That's when somebody's operating at their best. Not trading time for money, not to get a paycheck, for the love of the game. And that's where most of these people are at right now, because you don't get to the top where you retire to have an exit and show that type A personality that got there to begin with. You don't flip a switch when you're tired, guys. Don't do that. It doesn't happen. You need to feed that monster. Yes, please. Am I out of time or something?
Yeah, because I changed.
Oh, okay, sorry. Do you want to say, I'm sorry, I just took over the mic. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Okay, ask your question, please.
So the other thing is that if somebody, like you have a dedicated, and they are always involved, like in and out of, they're spending hours just on you.
Yeah.
No, they have, they're fractional. They are dividing their time between, or maybe one company.
Maybe just one. Remember, these people have to work full time, so they're probably not going to do that. Probably going to focus on your company because your company consumes 10 hours a week. They don't want to work more than that. They got hobbies, man. They want to travel the world and spend their money.
That's my question. Would they be able to, or would they want to focus on just one company, or would they divide their attention?
It's up to the person. Honestly, it's up to the person. Because sometimes what happens is they'll bring in a CEO and they'll bring in they need, okay, I need a CFO, but only for 2 hours a week, or I need a CMO for 1 hour a week. So they'll bring on their downline because we have a full suite. But what I'm saying is you have enough focus to focus on your company, and they're not going to go overburdened because they don't need to make money. So it's not going to happen. Yes. No, that's him. Yeah. Well, we're not together in life anyway, so yes. Yeah, I'm a Rectify Partners, Rectify Capital. That's what I am. Yeah, we did the lunch in there. That's some of them. Yeah, that's some of them. That's what we do. So we take the companies, their needs, we pair them with the people who can do the work, who don't want to work full time, put them together and start the party. And then once they get that going, I go raise the equity or cash or whatever. I raise their working capital so they can grow. That's what we do. But
a lot of times when you're raising capital, you're also looking at who's on the team. It's like a win-win.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing too. I'll tell you right now, if you're raising, one of the things as an investor I look for is the team, the talent. All right. What I'm seeing a lot more now is that when they have the talent on their investor deck, they have CEO, CFO, CRO, all these big names. Guess what? They're fractional. They don't say that, but they're fractional. Who cares? The talent's on the deck. And it looks really good to an investor to see a complete C-suite behind the money they're investing. Let's say that again. Yes, absolutely. All I want to know is that if I invest in a company, that every lever is being managed by somebody at that company. Nothing's falling through the cracks. And those really impressive names on that deck, when it talks about the team or the talent, love to see that. And so do other investors. Yes. Yeah. You stole her thunder. Way to go, man. Just kidding. That's exactly it. Yeah. And think about these professional board members. It's like that, but they're a lot deeper. You know, some people want to be on a board and have the 10,000 foot. Some people want to get down to and execute. They were so good at being a CFO or a CRO or a CEO. They want to do it again. It's like this drug. You can't get out of your system, man. You want to do more. But you still want to go to Europe. You can do that. That's why these people are at. But great point, exactly. You were going to say something. Go ahead.
So just talking about building your dream team, and a lot of the team that never gets mentioned is the external team. And that can be your advisors, your board, your investors. So I thought I would just kind of talk a little bit about building a highly effective advisory board on how to be more strategic and more intentional about surrounding yourself with great people. Because all of you, you've taken your business to a certain level, and I know that you have 6 or 7 incredibly successful people that want to help you, but perhaps they haven't had the vehicle. And very often when you talk about decks, you know, and I can tell from an investor's standpoint, you see the advisors, but you have questions. Are they really adding value? How much are you paying them? And is it just a play for association, you know, increase your valuation based on association? So I actually wrote a book on advisory boards, and there's 5 steps. Number 1, define your purpose. Do you need funding? Do you need access? Do you need advice? And it's usually all 3 of those, but you want to prioritize them. The next thing is picking your players. So instead of just picking a player based on name recognition value, my advice is to go and figure out the categories where you have gaps in your expertise and come up with the category and then start brainstorming within your circle of influence who could fulfill that role. And you can use your board, you can use whatever, but an advisory board can't kick you off. I mean, there are so many people who want to give back, and that's the one thing I really love about the Utah community ecosystem is everybody's just such great go-givers. So based on those categories, brainstorm 5 to 6 people who could fill that role. Then prioritize them based on expertise, experience, and contacts. The other thing that I'll advise right now is also think about diversity of voice at your table, because you're going to get much more interesting solutions and innovations by having a diversity of thought sitting at that table. So then you invite them. There's a whole process to inviting them, but if you have one linchpin, invite them first. And you do like a little mini pitch deck. Why them? Why you? Why now? And then set that expectation. How many meetings are you going to have? What's the compensation? If you are going to give equity, sometimes they don't want equity, they want stock options because of taxation purposes, but make sure it's vested over time. I like to recommend 3 years, because where your company is going to be in 3 years is very different. You're going to need different types of advisors in 3 years. And make sure that everything is vested against certain milestones so that they stay engaged and they're helping you get to where you want to go. The next P is preparation. So instead of like PowerPoint, 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 what do you guys think? I like to recommend that you come up with 1 to 3 challenge statements. What are your biggest challenges that you need to deal with right now. And then your advisors can come in prepared. I do believe, like, as opposed to having an advisors and not having a formalized board meeting, you'll be spending 3 hours with Dale, 3 hours with Dawn, 3 hours, and then eventually you start getting conflicting advice, and it's almost works against you. So if you can get everybody together in the room, you're gonna, I like to call it idea sex. It's like bang, 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 like, and someone is going to trigger something that's going to trigger something, and that's where the magic happens. That's where you really get that, you know, those innovative solutions that you never would have come up one-on-one with any of your advisors. Now, a caveat is that if you can afford it, and I highly recommend that you afford it, get a professional facilitator to run the meeting for you. That's actually one of my superpowers. But as a founder, you need to be sitting at that table with all your advisors 100% engaged, and, you know, have some of your key management team there too, because everybody's got so much value to give. Yeah, so reverse engineer and get actionable results. And then the last P is performance. How do you continue to engage your advisors, let them know that you're integrating their ideas into your strategy, and then they're going to become more vested. And then what ends up happening is your company becomes their topic of conversation at the water cooler with their billionaire friends. So I just wanted kind of, because we're talking about dream teams, I think as a part of a dream team that doesn't get talked about enough, this external dream team, and also have maybe one or two of your investors at the table as well, because they're going to become more engaged and more vested. So.
Oh, yeah, was that for Nancy or for me? Okay. All right, here, Nancy.
All of us, yeah. A good lawyer. You've got a lawyer on your team.
Listen, yeah, I do. There's a bunch of resources out there, incubators, SCORE, all these groups that want to help early pre-revenue, almost foundational companies, right? You want to float your idea past them first. You know, does your idea of a product or service hold water? Is somebody already doing it better? Why is your company going to be better than theirs? And before you even start building a team, step back and share the thought of your, you know, with trusted people, right? Where you're not divulging, you know, intimate information, but does your business, product, or service make sense to build around? And there's a lot of advisors out there who will help guys, early stage entrepreneurs, make that decision before you start going down and spending money on this team and everything else.
Pushing you to validate.
Right. Just does it hold water? So there's a whole list of state organizations and private and incubators and all that'll do that. Oh, see, 2 questions. Yes. I like 5. I like an odd number, so you never have a stalemate. I like 5 because what I want to have is, number 1, to Nancy's point, don't put a yes man on there. If somebody shakes your head yes every time, they're off the board. It pisses me off to no end. They're not paying attention, not engaged. I want someone who's going to challenge me, who's going to make me defend my decisions or the board's decisions, and who will speak up and not afraid to be confrontational.
I would also say it depends on where your gaps, how many gaps you have. Like, I would never go more than 7, because more than 8,
that's too much.
collaborate.
It's too much.
5.
5.
Yeah, 5 to 7.
I like 5. I like 5. 5's good.
But
5's good.
I do it more based on the categories. Like, if you
Right.
don't need that much help, then you don't want that many people.
Right. Okay, yeah.
invested in companies. So my thought to you is that you have to so to hire other people to do jobs that you don't fully understand, that's okay to do tasks. You're a visionary.
Yep.
So for you to get the visionary, you have to get silent. You have to become sense because understanding a smattering of all those learnings in Y Combinator are going to help crystallize on where you're taking the company. Then you hire people to take you to where you want.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask you all a question now for business owners. All right, and I want you to be brutally honest, okay? How many business owners are the smartest people in your business? Raise your hand. How many of you owners are the smartest person in your business? In your company, yeah, in your company. If you are, you're missing out on an opportunity. I've built a career out of being the dumbest guy in the board meeting. I think I mentioned that earlier, which isn't hard to do. My goal is to surround myself with people smarter than me, that will lift me up, that will question me, that will press me, and make me do better. And it's only by having people smarter than me. The companies I've lost money on investing over the years were the ones where the CEO had to be the smartest person in the room every time. And they have to do everything, they have to touch everything because they're so smart, they have to control every aspect of the business and it will bottleneck and almost fail almost every time. Unless you're Steve Jobs or something like that, or, the outliers, right? But for the most part, to Nancy's point and all of her points, surround yourself with really smart people. Don't be afraid to give up tasks. Don't be afraid to delegate. As long as they're better and smarter than you, it's okay because they're making you money. All right? Any questions? Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 Well, I think you have to determine, number, what stage of the business you're at. Are you pre-rev? Are you revenue? Are you designing your product or your tech? Are you close to that? Where you're at and the scale of your business will dictate kind of what team you start to build, right? So that's the first step. Where are you at in that step? And number two, if you're so early stage, most of our people, you don't have cash. You might give up equity. That's another thing. I love giving equity to key people in my companies. I love it. Because once you do that, it's no longer me versus you. We're in the same boat. All right? We're in the same boat. And now I don't have to worry about them because I know if I go away for 2 weeks and come back, I know they had my back because they have their back. So with the fractional, a lot of my guys, because they don't make money, they'll get involved in a company that has zero cash flow. They'll get involved. They'll work sweat equity for 3, 4, 5, 6 months till the company can get cash and do a raise. Once they do that, they accrue all their hours and convert it to a safe note, right? But they're in the game before they're getting paid. And that's the only way these people can get the help way back here before they have any cash. The last thing you want to do is bring on a team that's going to drain all the cash of your company so you can't grow. Right? The idea is to preserve cash as you scale your business and make sure you can cash flow along the way. And so that's one way to do it, is to sweat equity, convert to a safe note, and then go on and do your thing. Oh, okay. I'm going to turn time over to him then. Any questions before? Any other questions? Anybody? Bueller? Anybody? Okay, good.
In the early stages of your business, one of the biggest team members that you need to bring in are salespeople to bring in cash. And so I'd like to introduce Jaron.
Sorry I was late, guys. I was getting my butt kicked in pickleball, and then there was a crash on the freeway, so we're kind of late. But this is just a panel, so I can tell you a little bit about myself. Just kind of what we've been doing, but honestly, it'd probably be best if you guys have any types of questions. But My name's Jaron Erickson. I actually run a company called Sales Dojo. So has anyone ever heard of an SDR position before? Has anyone ever heard of SDR? So it stands for Sales Development Rep, or it's an entry-level person in a tech company. So typically when people start to like scale their business, they start to, as Nancy said, they start to hire a sales team. So usually it's going to be like a manager, maybe then like an account executive that's going to close. But we work with companies to help scale on their SDR side, so their top of funnel side. So these are individuals who are doing a lot of cold outreach, prospecting for their businesses, and things like that. So we help kind of on the go-to-market side as people are working with sales teams, as well as we help people get better careers in tech sales. So we actually run a program where we teach people how to do technical sales, and then a lot of our partners will hire our top graduates to go work at their company. So we currently have graduates from our program in companies like Pluralsight or Divi or Podium. So a lot of these bigger tech companies, we're able to fund a lot of our graduates in. But we also work with like smaller companies as they're starting to grow, as they're hiring maybe their first or second. So that's kind of what we do. And anything SDR related, like top funnel, like go to market motion, we deal a lot with, any software side to side. So I don't know, Nancy, is there anything that kind of open it up? Yeah, great questions. Yeah, I'll ask one question first. Who has a company? I'm assuming majority of us are founders. Who is a founder here? Okay, a lot of us. Who has salespeople other than themselves on their team? Some of us. Okay, so a lot of like founder-led sales still. But I think it's kind of taking the next step from being a founder, where you're also doing a million other things, to maybe having someone else that's kind of dedicated to that type of role. So, any types of questions? Did you have something?
I'm on the board.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
So, too many companies rush straight to hiring salespeople. That's wrong. We're working on a company right now, literally this owner, they're cash flowing, they're doing well. So we sat down with, it's a tech company, and they brought in this marketing team, this lady who's charging them 11 grand a month and producing nothing. Nothing. So we asked, why that? He goes, listen, truth be told, I hate confrontation. I hate hiring, firing people. I hate the whole thing. That's his pain. That's it. So before we do that, we're stepping in with a fractional CRO. Anybody know what CRO is? Anybody? Anybody? Right. Who manages the sales team in the sales process? CRO. So please come in. Will you manage that for me? Will you be the butthole in the room? Sorry, I was going to say that word. Sorry. Will you be the guy who hires and fires and has the really difficult conversations and develops KPIs and holds them accountable? All the stuff I hate doing? Sure, we can do that for you. But to the point of the dream team, as you were saying, don't just hire a bunch of salespeople. Hire a person who's skilled at that, of not just hiring salespeople, but developing your channel strategy, developing your CRMs to track and hold accountable, to hire the right people, to hold them accountable, develop KPIs. All that thing is done by this one CRO and their downline. Let them worry about hiring and firing. You want the person who's good at that. I'm not good at that. Yeah, give them a budget, give them KPIs. Their job is to do all that, not mine. Sorry. You were going to say something, Nancy? I'm sorry.
Of the training, and yes, the marketing person here on funnel,
Yeah.
and the pipeline.
Yeah, not CMO, CRO. Huge difference.
Yeah.
You don't want to see them. Well, that's what I'm saying. The CRO sometimes creates the team. That's what I'm saying. You might hire a bunch of people here, And the CRO steps in and goes, holy crap, why'd you hire those guys for? I got to fire them all and go here now. That's what I'm getting at, guys. Get the CRO and let them figure out their downline and their policies and structures and all that. You're a CEO. Yeah, sorry.
Well, so I 1000% agree with this point. I think a lot of times as a founder, like our first step is like, okay, I'm getting some leads, but I'm also doing a million other things. Like, how do we convert? And so we have a lot of companies who will reach out, and we actually have a process before we bring on partners. So we have to make sure that they have the right type of processes in place, because you can hire people, but if you don't have the process or the data element, which is a CRO's main goal, is like set up and manage these processes, then it's not going to be worth it. So it's a great, yeah, yeah. Processes are processes. No matter how they're set up, 1000%. Do you have a question?
Need to have some, I would look for somebody with that background. I would like the idea of having somebody who has the skills, but doesn't know the market. So how do we?
It's a really good question. So it's kind of a two-edged sword. I'll answer this in two different ways. So from my own experience, I worked at a company called Divvy. Has anyone ever heard of Divvy? Like they're a financial software. So I was talking to CFOs, like VPs of finance, controllers, every day about accounting. I had never taken an accounting class before I ever started talking to these CFOs. So learning an industry is really important, because by the end, I actually do feel like a pretty good expert. If we want to talk accounting, not balancing checks and balances, but if we want to talk about processes in accounting, we can do that. And I think I can still have a conversation. But I had to learn the industry. Now, what I did have already was a skill set that can be translated into any industry. So one of the things I think if you're looking for a salesperson, like especially like an SDR, the things I'd look at more is a little bit more character-based development. So when we come into our course, like when we bring students in, we don't care as much about like, oh, do you have sales experience? Where do you come from? We've worked with people who've been construction workers. We've worked with former school teachers. We've worked with people who are receptionists at gyms. And all of a sudden they turn into these high-performing sales individuals. Because you can teach the sales skills, which is what we want to do, and you can teach an industry, but what you can't teach is as well as how to handle rejection, how to have a day in and day out hustle and a grind mentality, and just even like ability to connect with people. These are things that a lot of people do naturally. And so if you're looking for a salesperson, I'd say focus more on the character at first. Is this someone that can come in and hustle and overcome opposition? From there, it's like, well, how can we teach them the skills? A lot of companies will send us individuals that they want to hire. So smaller startups will actually find someone they're like, hey, I like this guy. He doesn't have as much sales experience, especially like business to business. Can we put him through the program? And we go, absolutely. So we'll actually train salespeople for smaller startups on their process, on their company, and then help them get kind of started there. So again, I'd look more at character-based traits originally in hiring a salesperson, because you can teach the skills, you can teach the industry, but it's harder to teach character. I think that's a great question. Is that helpful? Okay, that's a great question. Yeah. Yeah, like some of the characteristics. Great question. So when, especially as a startup, anyone do like outbound cold outreach? Who's talking to companies that they don't know, or the company doesn't know who they are? Yeah, a lot of us, right? So outbound cold outreach is difficult, because you're talking to someone who doesn't know who you are, doesn't know what you do, and is probably doesn't want to talk to you. That's like a tough skill set to deal with, right? So I think a few of the attributes to look at, like I said, one is like, can someone handle rejection? Like, can they take no's? Because you're going to get a lot of no's, right? So that's one attribute. Another, I think, is, are they willing to do day in, day out grind. So a lot of companies will do like calls, like cold calls, which is a skill set, or like a cold email approach. So are they willing to kind of do the same thing over and over at a very high level? I think a lot of SDRs will get burned out quickly if they don't have the right team around them. But I would say the last trait I'm just top of mind would be, are they like willing to learn from their own mistakes? Because you're going to make mistakes and you're going to have to refine your own process. So can you find someone that can go above and beyond, learn from their mistakes, who's humble enough to learn, but is also willing to kind of do the day in, the day out type of hustle? I don't know if that answers your question.
I mean, can you also expand a little bit about paying them a minimum so that they can concentrate and having incentivized?
It's a great question, and I think it depends on what type of salesperson we're hiring. So an account executive who's closing deals is going to be different than like an SDR, which we predominantly focus. Focus of an SDR is to set meetings for a closer and then eventually start to close them. But I mean, from our perspective, majority of how a lot of tech companies set things up, they're paying these SDRs like a base salary a lot of times of typically around 40 to 45,000 base, and then they have a commission structure after that. So early on, again, it's like that might not be the best fit. I'd rather invest that money into a CRO that is going to be a lot more process oriented. But if you can find someone that's willing to work 100% commission, like that's also great. That's what door-to-door people do. A lot of people, door-to-door people go fully commission. So there are people out there that will do it. But these tech companies, they do give them a base salary.
But the risk in doing that is that if you hire people on the street,
Yeah.
reputation, there's a risk reputation. You don't say
Yeah, again, it goes back to I 1000% agree with it. Early on, if you're wanting to hire a salesperson, you need to find a manager or like a fractional CRO that can set up processes that can train and maintain a lot of what we would even be hoping to teach. So if you don't have those processes in, we can't send our people or refer them to your guys' companies. But once you're able to establish these processes of like, where do we get our leads? How do we contact our leads? Then who do I set these leads for? As you can start to build out these processes, which is a CRO's role, then you can plug in people to be able to run certain aspects. Yeah, that's a great thought. Yeah.
Sorry, I also want to make sure. So what your organization does is train salespeople.
Yeah, so it depends on your company size. So we typically need to make sure that there is a sales manager, a CRO in place already, and certain softwares or processes. We're not picky on which softwares, but we need to make sure you have a CRM. We need to make sure you have all these things in place, because we can't send our graduates to somewhere that they're not going to be successful. But we also do have companies that don't maybe qualify for us to send people. We will still train them for smaller organizations on the same skills. But yeah, we can't refer unless we have certain standards. Great question. Yeah.
And that, but when you pay somebody, then you are. Although I think it brings this.
100%. I think a lot of people are in sales because you can make a lot of money in sales. The harder I work, the more I make. Those are good people to bring onto your team. Someone who's motivated by that. You get to control a lot of what you do. So if we're consulting companies and you're looking up a pay structure, a lot of times, again, if you have like your SDR, which will set the meeting, your account executive will close it. Some companies will say, hey, that you don't get paid as an SDR unless that meeting closes. Well, guess what? That's out of their control. So that's going to really unincentivize that SDR. So typically most companies for like an entry level role are going to say, if you set a qualified meeting, you will get paid even if it doesn't close, because that's what they can control. As an account executive, you can control if they're closing the deal. So that's what you should get paid on. So I 1000% talking about incentive structures. You got to be able to get paid on what you can control. Oh yeah, Jen came through our program. Yeah, so this was, I think Jen was in our second cohort ever. We had 3 people in the cohort. This was really early on. As contrast, this was about 2.5 years ago, and we've since are now on our 23rd cohort. So we've put almost 200 people through our program. Again, a lot of them are working at different tech companies, but yeah, I just ran into Jen. Haven't seen her for a long time. So.
That's wonderful. So my name is Jen. I'm a tech entrepreneur, and I knew that sales was important. Like, great. I feel like I found a problem solution fit, but I also know traction is super important, and I just didn't have the skills of sales. And then I came across your father's post on LinkedIn about your upcoming class. And I got super excited because I knew that's where my gap was. And so, and for me, skills can be learned. I am willing to humble myself, be open and receptive, and just practice. And so he let me in. That's the whole thing that I shared with him, is not that I want a job in SDR. It's just I want to do founder-led sales. And I really appreciated his flexibility in allowing me to be a part of this. Learned so much from him, as well as the dynamic participants that were in there. And so now fast forward, a lot of R&D with the technology. And it was important for me, at least as a CEO, the vision was we will do tech development and custom development hand in hand. Why? We're very clear about this. We do not care to build a product that no one wants. No one wants. What I deal with is a triple-sided market. As a game developer, I'm acquainted with platforms like metaverse platforms. That's fine. I knew the language and what have you. But an important part of this triple-sided market was brands. That was just outside. But the fact that I went as a student to his school, learned the principles, and note this, I didn't care about the industry. I was empowered with the principles and the practices that he shared, best practices. I incorporated it, did my research, worked on my rapport, understood what perhaps the prospect was thinking. I'm sharing with you of just a few of the many wonderful principles that I learned from him. And long of the short is that we are signing contracts to do branded campaigns within my field. And get this, guys, without a minimum guarantee. Thank you. A minimum guarantee, when it's a top global brand, easily can cost a minimum of $100,000. And I was able to persuade or influence so we could eliminate that. And again, thank you so much, Jaron, because really, that is an outcome based from your program. Thank you so much.
Appreciate that. That's cool.
Less than 5-minute break, and we're going to get into financial foundation and then funding. Okay, thank you.